Georgie Knoll here. He wants to talk about the importance of electrical inspectors and how they help with your guys' training. So we'll give it to Mr. Knoll.
Thank you very much. I'll give you a little bit of background of what I have experienced over the years. I was an electrician in the Navy. Once I got out of the Navy, I did go into the JATC, and I went through the training. I'm not going to age myself when I went in and turned out, but I got my journeyman's license, and then I've worked some of the power plants around the state. I've worked residential, commercial, and industrial locations, refineries and things, so I have a well-rounded education besides being a shipboard electrician. So I did a lot of work. I worked underground coal mines. So I learned quite a bit in the electrical industry. That was because of the work coming and going out of the state. I was encouraged to try to be an electrical inspector. As much as I like inspectors, now I am one. So I did become an inspector. I had the pleasure, I guess, if you will. I joined the International Association of Electrical Inspectors. We do a lot of training through the electrical industry, and we have a whole variety of guest speakers from NFPA, which is the author of the code. We also have people in the industry from Enterprise Laboratory, testing laboratories, engineers, and things of that nature. So as an inspector, I can draw from those people when somebody comes up with a question or an issue. Now, there's a phrase in the code book that leaves it up to the authority having jurisdiction. And we do not all agree upon the same thing. So you have an inspector, and it may be a local jurisdiction that has a different opinion than me as a state inspector. And if you, in my opinion, if you feel that I'm wrong and you're right, let's talk about it. The code, it leaves it up to the interpretation of the individual. So the way I enforce the code is I look at life safety. That is the key for inspectors, life safety. That's part of our division, electrical safety, fire prevention, and electrical safety. So I uphold the electrical safety part of things, which involves the electrical industry as a whole. Now, the advancement of technology through the years, you guys have seen part of it. You're living part of it, wiring a house, looking at the connections and the fire alarm systems and the programmable logic controllers you have out there. I learned in the Navy how to do motor controls with all hard contacts. Now you have PLCs. Another big change that I've seen as an inspector and in the electrical industry is photovoltaic, PV systems, solar. There is so much advancement in the solar industry. You guys really need to keep up with the technology if you're going to be working in it. So I encourage everybody to stay up with your education as far as continuing education to keep your license current. Continuing education is to learn the advancement of technology. Through the IAI, I have the privilege of being on a code panel. This is my third and final term on code panel 6. I was one of the persons, don't blame me for all the bad changes in the code, but on the 17, the 2020 code, and the 2023 code. Sitting on a code panel to see how this document is made is really eye-opening. Code panel 6 takes care of only chapter 3. you have one code panel just for 250, grounding. Because as we all know, grounding is such a misconstrued article of the code. So, and I can honestly say that it's easy for me to understand Article 250 because you have your grounding electrode system, you have your equipment grounding, and then you have your bonding. It's easy once you break it down. So, breaking down the code book to where you can understand it, chapters 1 through 4 is general. 5, 6, and 7 is special usage, special occupancies. Chapter 8 is standalone. If you can understand how to break the code book down, you can understand when you're getting ready to work in a certain area or on a certain application, you'll know where in the code you can go to. When it comes time to take a test, you'll know basically if you can break down the code book where it's more user-friendly. Because that code book can be really intimidating. So with that said, as a local authority having jurisdiction, I see a lot, and I'm also a contact. Feel free to get a hold of me if you have any questions during your time in the electrical industry. So I'll open up the floor for questions. Anybody have any questions for me?
What's the worst violation you've ever seen?
I've done fire investigations on that. Because I do have certification on origin cause, electric cause fires. That's part of my job as with the fire marshal's office. I think the biggest, there's a violation, in my opinion, that's my opinion, there's a violation of the code and then there's a correction in the code. If I come and tell the electrician that, okay, we have a problem with this installation, we have a supporting issue, as long as they agree with me and say, okay, I'll change the supporting method or how I want to see it. There's 1,000 ways of doing things to make it code compliant. Okay, still be applied to the code. Now, in my opinion, a violation is when you tell me to pack sand and say I'm not going to do it. Now, I've got to take other avenues in order to, I hate to use the term, force somebody to get in compliance. My biggest challenge now is with the PV solar systems, because there's a lot of people thinking that they can put in a solar system and it's all okay. Got to understand, a solar system is a power producing entity, just like the utility coming from the power company. Now you're going to combine that solar system along with the utility. There's a lot of things that has to happen to make it safe. For, in the event you lose utility power, you're not going to backfeed on the utility line. Goes through the transformer, re-energizes that line. So there is provisions in the code to prevent that. Another part of the code in the last couple of code cycles is first responders, our firefighters. Okay, one of the changes in the code is labeling the disconnecting means on the outside of a building. So when the first responders get there to your building that's on fire, they're able to shut the power off without having to call the power company. So you have 3 different ways of labeling that disconnecting means. Another part of the code that was changed for the first responders is your solar system. There again, it's a power producing entity. If your wiring method is up in the attic and they go in there to ventilate and cut a hole in the ceiling, if they cut into your line that is energized through your solar system, somebody's going to get hurt. So the first responders have a lot of input into our codes, along with the electrical industry as a whole. So, I mean, it's a wide variety of things, the technology advancing the way it is. Microinverters. You can have a solar system that has microinverters that comes out of the array with 240 volts AC, no DC. It's all converted in at each panel. So, and your output can vary depending upon the number of panels. Now DC, on the other hand, going to your inverter, you can have up to 300 to 600 volts DC going to your inverter. So these are the things that we are looking for when I do an inspection. How much power is this thing producing? How much current is this thing producing? As an inspector, I want to know, where's the disconnecting means? Where's our grounding? Things of that nature. Now, in the last year, our agency has required anybody going to put in a PV system, it will go through plan review. It has to be submitted, and before any work is started, that plan review has to be completed and approved. So, as an inspector, I'm not going to walk on the job and see something that's just started and I don't have nothing to look at. What was submitted and what's actually put in may be two different animals. So these are the things as an inspector I look for. I was a guy that worked with the tools just like you guys. And a lot of the people working for Underwriters Laboratory and these other outfits that NEMA, National Electrical Manufacturers Association, Don Iverson, he was an electrician, he was a contractor, he worked in the field. There's a lot of advancements in the electrical industry for you people, just not only wiring a house or wiring something up, you can move on to other things in the electrical industry. Power companies, work in maintenance as an electrician, things of that nature. So there's a whole variety of things that you can do. So I invite everybody to stay in touch with the changes and continue your education. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, would you be able to talk about like what you think would be the biggest change possibly coming in the 2023 session?
There was over, for the 2020 code alone, it was almost 4,000 proposals or public inputs for changes in the NEC. Okay. I believe that 2023 was pretty close to that. Code Panel 6 only received a fraction of it. There's 18 code panels. If you look at your NEC, you'll look at there's 18 code panels. And each code panel is responsible for a certain part of the code. Okay, out of what we dealt with in there's code making process, anybody can submit a change to the NEC. Electrician, anybody can make a change. You fill out the form, you send it in. Now, if you send it in through the IBW, NECA, IAI, it's looked at a little bit more favorable, but you can still send it in to NFPA. They'll look at your change. So now you think you have to, you want a pink wire for grounding, say for instance. You make that proposal or that public input. You have substantiation for that. All right, so you've made that application to NFPA or whatever. They look at it. They're going to look at it, okay? Now they take that, and they take it, assign it to the proper code panel. So that code panel looks at that change and make it, if it's viable or not. You as the author of that change, they will let you know if it's shot down, if it's resolved, or if it's going to move to the next level, or if they're going to rewrite it a little bit. You as a submitter will have the opportunity, if it's resolved, to appeal it. I'm not going to go into great detail, but copper-clad aluminum on 14 gauge wire has been submitted for the third time.
So he's tried that multiple times, hasn't he?
Yes. I'm not going to go into detail because, but because of that, the people have appealed the decision of the code panel. We have moved forward with it. Okay? You need to have testing. You got to have follow the proper rules if you want to change. Okay? So your public input has been resolved, it's been shot down. So you appeal it for the second revision. So the first revision actually is in the spring of the year prior to when it goes to print. I'll explain a little bit more how the code is made. So the second revision, we look at your appeal, and then we act upon that appeal. So the 2023 code is, we're done with our second revision. We was done with it in October of this year, 2020, for the 2023 code. So now, between October and June of next year, the correlating committee, NFPA, is all going to go through the parts of the code that meld together and things of that nature. It goes into print, I believe, June or July of next year. So it's able to be purchased by September of 2022, because a lot of municipalities are going to take their code in effect beginning of 2023. So now you have the document in hand. That's how the process goes. So I encourage journeymen and apprentices alike, if you feel something in the code isn't right or you would like to see a change, submit a public input. Get a hold of your representative with the IABW or the IAEI. You make your public input, we'll look at it and tell you if it sounds good enough, rewrite it if necessary, and then it'll go through the system. So just a few of the proposals or public inputs, there's too many of them to really say one that stood out. I know a lot of the heated discussions was the copper-clad aluminum and 14 gauge and the 16 gauge copper, okay, with a 10 amp overcurrent device. So what the panel's done, I'm not privileged to say, you'll see whatever in the 2023 code. We're not seeing it because it's still going through the coordinating committee. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Anybody else? I want to thank everybody for listening to me. If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of me. I'm sure a lot of the electricians in here already know how to get a hold of me. You see me on occasions, so get a hold of your state inspector. They'll know how to get a hold of me. Okay? So, thank you very much for your time.